The tow truck driver looked nervous before he even hooked up my truck. That should have been my first clue this whole thing was about to explode. Rain hammered the asphalt hard enough to blur the yellow parking lines my father painted back in 1987. Red and blue sheriff lights bounced across puddles while residents stood under umbrellas watching like they'd just stumbled into free entertainment. And right in the middle of my parking lot stood Patricia Thornwell in a white raincoat, holding a clipboard like she was commanding a military operation instead of stealing an old man's property. "Tow it," she snapped. "And make sure he gets the violation notice this time." The driver hesitated, just for half a second. "Ma'am." Patricia turned so fast I thought her neck might crack. "Do it now." Then she looked at me with that tight little smile rich people use when they think they've already won. "Maybe this'll teach you to follow HOA parking regulations, Mr. Holloway." I looked past her at my old Ford F-250 getting dragged backward across wet asphalt. The same truck I'd driven for almost 15 years. The same truck that hauled supplies when my wife was sick. The same truck my father helped me rebuild one summer before he passed. And here was this woman trying to find me for parking it on my own land. Funny thing is, I wasn't even angry yet. Not really. I was too busy noticing details. The new HOA signs bolted into my concrete. The towing invoice number sticking out of the driver's clipboard. The deputy standing there pretending not to make eye contact with me. The fact Patricia had parked her Lexus directly under the old security camera mounted on my light pole. Big mistake. "You can't park that here without an HOA permit," Patricia said louder this time so the crowd could hear her. I nodded slowly like I was actually thinking about it. Then I asked the tow driver one question. "You know who pays property taxes on this lot?" The guy froze. Patricia didn't. "Ignore him," she barked. "He does this every meeting." Now the residents were whispering. That's the thing about small Tennessee communities. Folks smell drama faster than barbecue smoke. And people started realizing something didn't add up. Because if this really belonged to the HOA, why was Patricia yelling so hard? Why was I standing there calm as Sunday morning? The deputy finally stepped closer. "Grant, maybe just take it up with the board." I looked at him. "Deputy, you ever seen somebody get fined for standing in their own kitchen?" He rubbed the back of his neck. Didn't answer. Patricia shoved a folded paper against my chest. $3,200 in violations. Unauthorized commercial vehicle. Illegal overnight parking. Refusal to comply with community standards. I unfolded the paper carefully while rain dripped off the edges. Then I laughed. Not loud. Just enough to make Patricia's smile twitch. "What's funny?" she asked. I looked around at the parking lot. 48 spaces. Every inch paved by my father and me almost 40 years ago. Every crack in the asphalt familiar as wrinkles on my own hands. "Nothing," I said. "Just thinking my dad would have gotten a kick out of this." Patricia crossed her arms. "Your father doesn't own this property anymore." That's when the dopamine hit landed. Because I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an old brass key. Small thing. Worn smooth with age. "You might want to be real careful saying that," I told her. Then I walked past the tow truck, past the sheriff cruiser, past 20 residents staring holes through me, and unlocked the rusted side office at the edge of the lot. Nobody had seen inside that building in years. Dust floated through the air when I flipped the light on. Metal shelves. Old oil cans. Filing cabinets older than most marriages. I could hear Patricia outside still talking big for the crowd. "He's not part of this community," she said. "People like him think rules don't apply to them. People like him." That part almost made me smile. Because Patricia Thornwell thought she was dealing with a stubborn old mechanic too cheap to pay HOA fees. She had no idea she'd just handed me enough evidence to bury her entire board. I slid open the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet and pulled out a thick manila envelope wrapped in faded rubber bands. The original deed. Tax receipts. Plat maps. Survey. Records. Every single parking space outlined in black ink older than Patricia's marriage. Rain thundered against the windows while I spread the documents across the desk. My father used to say paperwork has a funny way of making loud people quiet. Turns out he was right. And Patricia Thornwell had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment below and tell me honestly. If somebody fined you for standing on your own property, what would you do? Because trust me, this thing was only getting started. My father poured that asphalt in July of 1987 during the hottest summer Tennessee had seen in years. I remember because the tar stuck to our boots so bad he had to spray them down with diesel fuel every night before we went inside. I was 28 back then, still dumb enough to think hard work could fix anything. Dad owned a small repair garage off Highway 41. Nothing fancy. 2 service bays, 1 rusty soda machine, and a hand-painted sign that leaned sideways every time the wind picked up. But people trusted him. Farmers trusted him. Truckers trusted him. Sheriff deputies trusted him. Around here that mattered more than fancy buildings. Behind the garage sat an empty gravel lot that turned into a muddy swamp every time it rained. One afternoon, Dad stood out there wiping sweat off his forehead with an oil rag and said, "Grant, if folks cannot park without sinking to their ankles, they stop coming." That was it. No business seminar. No investor meeting. Just common sense from a man who worked 6 days a week with grease under his fingernails. We spent the next 3 months saving every dollar we could to pave that lot. Dad sold an old Camaro Project he loved. I skipped replacing my transmission another year. Mom packed peanut butter sandwiches so we would not spend money eating out. Every inch of that asphalt cost something. That is why standing there watching Patricia act like she owned it felt personal in a way I cannot fully explain. Some people see a parking lot. I see my father climbing out of a cement mixer at 62 years old with his back hurting so bad he could barely stand straight. I see my wife Linda bringing sweet tea out in plastic cups while country music played from a radio balanced on a toolbox. I see summers before cancer took her. Back then the place smelled like fresh cut grass, motor oil, hot rubber, and barbecue drifting over from the gas station next door. Life was simple, honest. Then time did what time always does. Big chain repair shops moved in. The highway expanded. Dad passed in 2004. Linda got sick 8 years later. By the time she was gone, I had sold the garage building itself just to keep up with medical bills. But I never sold the parking lot. Could not do it. That asphalt was the last piece of my family left untouched. Most mornings I still drove over there with coffee before sunrise. Old habits die hard. I liked hearing the crunch of gravel near the edges and watching steam rise off the pavement after rain. Sometimes truckers parked there while grabbing breakfast down the street. Sometimes church folks used it on Sundays when the nearby lot filled up. I never minded. Dad always said empty land rots faster than busy land. Things stayed peaceful until Ridgeline Meadows got built next door 3 years ago. Huge entrance sign. Decorative fountains. Beige houses packed together, so tight you could probably borrow sugar through the bathroom window. Then came the HOA. At first it was harmless stuff. Newsletters. Seasonal decorations. Complaints about mailbox colors. Typical suburban nonsense. I figured it had nothing to do with me because my property sat outside their boundary line. Legally outside. That part matters. But then people started parking on my lot during HOA events. Holiday parties. Yard sales. Community meetings. One Saturday, I counted 37 cars parked there while a live band played inside the subdivision clubhouse. Nobody asked permission. Nobody offered rent. They just acted like the land had always belonged to them. I tried being polite at first. That was probably my mistake. I even spoke to Patricia one afternoon after finding orange cones blocking half my spaces. She climbed out of her white Lexus wearing sunglasses big enough to cover half her face and smiled like we were old friends. "We are just trying to help. Traffic flow better for the community," she said. Community. That word again. Funny how people use that word when they want something that belongs to somebody else. I told her calmly, "Ma'am, this property is private." She gave me a little laugh. "Everything around here benefits the HOA eventually." That sentence sat wrong with me all night. A month later, the first HOA parking signs appeared. Then painted reserved spaces. Then towing warnings. Then permit stickers. Patricia never asked. She just kept taking little pieces at a time, like feeding breadcrumbs to ducks, until suddenly the whole loaf was gone. Looking back now, I should have realized what she was doing from the start. But grief changes a man. Losing Linda took the fight out of me for a long time. Some mornings, just getting out of bed felt harder than rebuilding an engine. Patricia saw an old widower sitting quietly on valuable land and assumed nobody would push back. That was her first mistake. Her second mistake was putting everything in writing. The first certified letter showed up on a Tuesday morning folded so perfectly it looked like somebody ironed it before mailing it. I was sitting at my kitchen table eating scrambled eggs when I saw the bright green sticker from the Homeowners Association across the front. That alone told me Patricia was trying to make a point. Most people around here just leave notes on doors. Certified mail means somebody wants a paper trail. I opened it slow while my coffee steamed beside me. Official notice of noncompliance. Real dramatic stuff. According to the letter, my parking lot had now been designated shared overflow parking under something Patricia called the Ridgeline Community Access Initiative. Sounds official, right? That is how people like Patricia operate. They bury nonsense under important-sounding words and hope nobody asks questions. The letter claimed I was interfering with approved parking operations by leaving my truck in community reserved spaces. Community reserved spaces. On my land. I actually laughed out loud sitting there alone in my kitchen. Then I noticed something that made me stop laughing. Attached to the notice was a bill. For $100. Administrative parking violation fee. Due within 10 business days. Late penalties applied daily. That was the moment I realized Patricia was not just bossy. She was building something. Slowly. Strategically. Like a snake wrapping around a fence post one coil at a time. I drove over to the lot right after breakfast and nearly spit my coffee out when I saw fresh yellow paint across 6 spaces near the entrance. Visitor parking only. Another sign read HOA event parking. And parked underneath those signs were 3 shiny SUVs with subdivision decals on the windows like they belonged there. One woman unloading groceries smiled at me and said, "Good thing they added more parking. The clubhouse gets crowded." She honestly thought the HOA owned the place. That was the scary part. Patricia had repeated the lie so many times people accepted it as truth. I walked over to the side office and found another surprise. Somebody had zip-tied HOA rules directly onto my fence. Laminated pages. Towing policies. Parking regulations. Quiet hour enforcement. They even listed prohibited vehicle types. Apparently my old truck counted as an eyesore now. I was still standing there reading when Patricia rolled up in her Lexus. Clean as a showroom car despite the muddy roads. She climbed out holding a leather binder against her chest like a lawyer heading into court. "Good morning, Grant," she said, sweet as syrup. "I trust you received our notice." Our notice? Funny how people say our when they mean mine. "You nailed rules onto my fence," I said. "Temporary postings," she answered without missing a beat. "The community requested clearer parking guidance." I looked around the empty lot. What community? Her smile tightened. The homeowners paying to maintain neighborhood standards. Neighborhood standards do not extend onto my parcel. She tilted her head at me like I was a stubborn child. "That is being reviewed." Reviewed. There was another one of Patricia's favorite words. Everything was always under review when she wanted control over it. I pointed at the signs. "Take those down." "Actually," she said, flipping open her binder. "The board voted unanimously last Thursday." "You held a board meeting about my property?" "Shared use property," she corrected. Then she handed me another paper. This one was even better. It claimed the HOA now had temporary authority to regulate parking due to increased traffic concerns. Temporary authority. I swear people invent the craziest phrases when they think nobody understands the law. "Patricia," I said calmly, "you cannot vote yourself ownership of land." That finally cracked her smile a little. Just for a second. Nobody said ownership. "Then what exactly are you saying?" She looked me dead in the eye. "I am saying communities evolve. Sometimes old properties become part of something bigger." There it was. The real truth hiding underneath all the paperwork. Patricia did not see my lot as private property. She saw it as unfinished HOA territory. Something eventually absorbed into her little kingdom. And honestly, that explained everything. The signs. The fines. The towing threats. She was conditioning people. Getting residents used to treating my land like community space until one day nobody remembered it belonged to somebody else. I have seen this kind of thing before. Not with parking lots. With old farms. Hunting land. Boat docks. One small compromise turns into another until paperwork gets muddy and memories fade. But Patricia made one critical mistake that day. She got too comfortable. Before leaving, she pointed toward the security camera mounted above the office door and said, "You really should update those old things. Half the time they probably do not even work." Then she smiled and drove away. The second her Lexus disappeared around the corner, I unlocked the office and sat down at my father's old metal desk. Because those cameras worked perfectly, and they had been recording every sign, every tow truck, every meeting, every fake parking notice Patricia's board posted for the last 8 months, including her little speech 5 minutes earlier. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the monitor while rain clouds rolled over the Tennessee hills outside. Then I opened a fresh notebook and wrote 6 words across the first page. Everything in writing. Everything on camera. Because if Patricia Thornwell wanted to play property games, I was finally ready to let her. Things escalated fast after that. Patricia must have realized I was not going to roll over because the next Monday I showed up and found orange stickers slapped across 6 windshields in my lot. Big ugly things that read HOA parking violation in bright black letters. One belonged to a plumber grabbing breakfast before work. Another belonged to an elderly woman from the church across the road. One truck had veteran plates hanging off the bumper. None of those people even lived inside Ridgeline Meadows. Patricia did not care. She had crossed into something new now. Control for the sake of control. I peeled one of the stickers off a windshield and nearly laughed at the wording underneath. Unauthorized use of regulated community parking area. Regulated community parking area. Amazing how official theft sounds when typed in bold letters. Around noon, the church secretary came walking over holding one of the notices with both hands like it might explode. "Grant," she asked softly, "does the HOA own this lot now?" That question hit harder than I expected. Because once people start doubting ownership, problems spread fast. I shook my head. "No, ma'am. They do not." She looked relieved for about 2 seconds. Then she frowned again. "Then why are deputies coming out here?" Good question. Turns out when enough people wear matching polos and carry clipboards, folks assume authority is real. Patricia understood that better than anybody. She weaponized appearances. 2 days later, she held her first official HOA parking enforcement event. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that is literally what the banner said. They set up folding tables near the subdivision entrance with bottled water, volunteer badges, and little maps showing approved visitor parking. On my property, Patricia even hired a local towing company to stand by during the event. I watched the whole circus from inside the office while chewing on stale peanuts from the vending machine my father never threw away. Every few minutes, Patricia strutted across the asphalt and heels pointing at cars like an airport traffic controller. "This row is resident only. That truck has no permit. Move that vehicle immediately." People obeyed because they assumed she had the right. That is the scary thing about fake authority. Most people never question it. Around 3 o'clock, an older man driving a faded blue pickup parked near the side fence and walked toward the diner across the street. 5 minutes later, the tow truck started backing toward his vehicle. I stepped outside before they hooked it. "Driver," I called out. "You sure you want to tow that?" Patricia folded her arms instantly. "Do not interfere with HOA operations." HOA operations. I swear she talked like she was running the Pentagon. The tow driver looked uncomfortable again. Same guy from before. "Sir, they told us this was private HOA parking. Did they show you a deed?" I asked. Patricia jumped in before he could answer. "We have board authority." I nodded slowly. "That is not what I asked." For a second, nobody spoke. Rainwater dripped off the light poles. Traffic hummed out on Highway 41. Then the old man from the diner came jogging back holding a takeout bag. "Hey," he yelled. "What are y'all doing with my truck?" Patricia turned toward him instantly. "Sir, you parked illegally in a resident-restricted area." The man blinked twice. "Lady, I have parked here every Thursday for 10 years. New regulations." "Whose regulations?" Patricia smiled like a teacher correcting a dumb student. "The Homeowners Association." The old man looked over at me. "Grant, what the hell is she talking about?" Before I could answer, Patricia handed him a printed citation. $150, plus towing fees if unpaid. The man stared at the paper so long I thought he might crumple it right there. "This is crazy," he muttered. "I'm just trying to buy a meatloaf sandwich." Patricia did not even blink. Rules apply equally to everyone. That sentence right there told me exactly who she was. People like Patricia love rules when rules give them power over somebody else. The old man finally climbed into his truck and drove away shaking his head. Patricia watched him leave with that same tight smile she always wore after getting her way. Then she turned toward me. "You could avoid all this if you cooperated." "Cooperated with what?" I asked. "Progress." There it was again. Another one of her magic words. Progress. Community. Standards. Shared use. She wrapped everything in friendly language so nobody noticed the greed underneath. I looked past her toward the residents helping direct traffic across my asphalt like they owned the place. Then I spotted something interesting. Near the folding table sat a gray metal cash box. Every visitor permit Patricia handed out cost $20 cash. $20 to park on land she did not own. Suddenly, the whole picture became clearer. This was not just about control anymore. Patricia had turned my property into a business. And judging by the stack of bills disappearing into that lockbox, business was booming. I walked back into the office without another word while Patricia kept directing cars behind me. She probably thought I was defeated. Truth was, I was finally starting to understand how deep this thing really went. And once money starts flowing through fake authority, people get sloppy. Very sloppy. By the end of that month, Patricia had turned my parking lot into the unofficial front gate for the entire subdivision. Residents parked there during cookouts. Real estate agents parked there during open houses. Contractors parked there while building backyard patios and fancy outdoor kitchens. And every single one of them paid the HOA for the privilege of using land the HOA did not own. What made it worse was how normal it started to feel for everybody else. That is how bad systems grow. Not overnight. Little by little until people stop asking questions. Every Friday evening, Patricia set up what she called community parking coordination near the clubhouse entrance. Sounds harmless, right? In reality, it was just HOA volunteers collecting cash and issuing permits like they worked for the county. They even wore matching yellow safety vests now. One teenager waved flashlights at cars like he was directing planes at an airport. I sat inside my office one evening watching the whole operation through the security cameras while eating cold fried chicken from the diner down the road. At exactly 6:15, Patricia opened the gray cash box and started counting bills. Tens, 20s, 50s. The camera angle was not perfect, but it was good enough. Then came the moment that changed everything. Around 7 o'clock, an ambulance tried pulling through the lot. Lights flashing, siren chirping short bursts. Everybody started moving except one HOA volunteer, standing beside a cone barrier Patricia had installed near the entrance. The kid actually held up his hand at the ambulance driver like traffic control. I nearly dropped my chicken bone. The paramedic rolled down his window, looking furious. "Move the cone," he snapped. The volunteer looked nervous. "I need HOA clearance for emergency access." I thought the paramedic was going to explode. "Son, I do not need permission from a homeowners association to save somebody's life." He shoved the cone aside himself and drove through while residents stared in shock. 5 minutes later, I found out what happened. Elderly man over in Ridgeline Meadows had chest pains during a barbecue. Ambulance lost almost 2 minutes because HOA volunteers blocked the entrance trying to enforce Patricia's parking setup. 2 minutes. Maybe that does not sound like much, but ask any paramedic and they will tell you those minutes matter. Suddenly, this whole thing did not feel annoying anymore. It felt dangerous. The next morning, I drove to the lot before sunrise like I always did. Fog hung low over the asphalt, and the air smelled like wet pine trees after rain. Somebody had left beer cans near the fence overnight. Another HOA sign leaned crooked beside space number 12. Then I spotted fresh tire marks looping across the corner my father always kept cleanest. For some reason, that bothered me more than the fines. I stood there staring at those tracks when Deputy Ellis pulled up beside the curb. Same deputy from the tow incident. He climbed out slow with coffee in one hand, looking exhausted already. "Morning, Grant." "Morning." He glanced around the lot. Patricia filed 3 more complaints. "What for this time?" He pulled folded papers from under his arm. "Obstruction of HOA operations. Hostile interference. Unauthorized surveillance." I blinked once. "Unauthorized surveillance." He pointed toward the office camera. "She says you are recording residents without HOA approval." I actually laughed this time. Could not help it. "Deputy, that camera has been there since George Bush was president." He rubbed his forehead. "I know. Then why are you here?" He hesitated too long before answering. That told me everything. "Look," he said quietly. "The HOA board has connections downtown. They keep calling the county office. And," he lowered his voice further, "they are trying to paint you as unstable." That hit me like ice water. Not angry old man. Not difficult property owner. Unstable. Suddenly, Patricia's strategy became crystal clear. If she could make me look irrational enough, maybe nobody would question her authority over the land. Maybe people would stop listening when I talked about deeds and property lines. It was not about parking anymore. It was about credibility, reputation, perception. Deputy Ellis handed me the complaints awkwardly. "Off the record," he muttered. "You need a lawyer." "Already working on it." That was technically true. I had not hired one yet, but 3 nights earlier I started organizing every single piece of evidence into labeled folders. Towing records, HOA notices, security footage, permit fees, screenshots from the Ridgeline Meadows Facebook group where Patricia bragged about expanding HOA managed parking capacity. That woman documented her own scheme better than I ever could. After Ellis left, I spent most of the afternoon inside the office reviewing footage. Around 4:30, I noticed something strange on camera 3. Patricia and the HOA treasurer standing near the cash box after everybody else left. The treasurer looked nervous. Patricia looked irritated. She handed him a stack of papers and pointed toward my office. Then the treasurer shook his head hard enough I could see it clearly even without sound. Patricia stepped closer. Finger pointed right at his chest. He finally nodded. 30 minutes later, I learned why. A new certified letter appeared taped to my office door. This one came directly from the HOA attorney. According to the letter, Ridgeline Meadows was now exploring legal action to establish permanent community easement rights over my property based on continued public use. I read that sentence 3 times standing there in the parking lot while thunder rolled somewhere over the hills. Then I looked up slowly at the rows of parked cars scattered across my father's asphalt. Suddenly, every free barbecue, every community event, every temporary parking arrangement from the last 3 years clicked together inside my head like puzzle pieces. Patricia had not been improvising. She had been building toward this from the start. The next morning, I drove straight to the county records office before Patricia could send another certified letter pretending she owned half of Tennessee. If you have never been inside one of those old county buildings, they all smell the same. Dust, coffee, paper older than your grandparents. The place looked frozen somewhere around 1984. Beige walls, flickering lights, ceiling fans turning slow like they were tired of working too. I carried 3 boxes of documents inside and set them on the counter hard enough to wake up the clerk behind it. Her name tag read Donna. Late 60s maybe. Reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She looked at my boxes, then at me. Honey, she sighed. Either you are filing a lawsuit or getting divorced. Neither, I said. Yet. That actually made her laugh. I explained everything slowly. The HOA signs, the towing, the fines, the fake permits, the easement threat. Donna listened without interrupting once. Then I slid the original deed across the counter. Her whole expression changed immediately. That is something younger folks do not always understand. Old county clerks know property records better than most lawyers. They can smell nonsense fast. Donna adjusted her glasses and stared down at the deed for a long time. Your daddy recorded this expansion in '87. Yes, ma'am. And taxes stayed current ever since. I handed her the receipts. 40 years worth. Every payment stamped and filed. My father missed anniversaries sometimes. Forgot birthdays once in a while. But he never missed property taxes. Donna flipped through the papers quietly while the copy machine hummed in the background. Finally, she leaned closer and lowered her voice. Grant, did anybody from that HOA ever contact the county about transferring parcel authority? Not that I know of. She disappeared into the back room for almost 20 minutes. Long enough for me to finish 2 cups of burnt vending machine coffee and start getting nervous. When she finally returned, she carried a thick folder under her arm. Well, she muttered, dropping it onto the counter. This explains a whole lot. Turns out Patricia's HOA attorney had already filed inquiries with the county 3 separate times during the past year. Not ownership transfer requests exactly. Something sneakier. They kept asking about public access classification changes and shared commercial use interpretations. Basically legal ways to blur the line between private property and community access. Donna tapped one document with her finger. See this? I leaned closer. Temporary community accommodation request. Dated 8 months earlier. Filed by Ridgeline Meadows HOA. Using photos of my parking lot packed with cars during their Christmas festival as evidence of ongoing public use. My stomach turned cold instantly. Patricia had been documenting her own events on my property to build a future claim against me. Every barbecue, every concert, every holiday gathering. She was trying to manufacture the appearance that the lot already functioned as permanent community property. Can they actually do that? I asked quietly. Donna snorted so hard I thought she might choke on her coffee. Honey, people try all kinds of stupid things with land law. Then her face got serious again. But stupid can still get expensive if nobody fights back. That sentence stuck with me, because she was right. The law does not magically protect people who ignore problems. You still have to show up. You still have to document things. You still have to defend your property before somebody else rewrites the story for you. Donna spent the next hour pulling maps, zoning records, and archived survey files from storage. Every document confirmed the same thing. My lot sat completely outside HOA jurisdiction. No shared easement. No municipal partnership. No parking agreement. Nothing. Legally speaking, Patricia had about as much authority over my property as she did over the moon. But then Donna found the really interesting part. Financial disclosures. Tennessee HOAs have to file certain public records when collecting community fees. Most people never look at them. Patricia probably assumed nobody ever would. Big mistake. Donna printed 3 pages and slid them across the counter slowly. Look at line 14. I read it once, then twice. Parking revenue income. $28,000 for $100 collected over the previous fiscal year. My parking lot. My asphalt. My father's property. $28,000. Suddenly, every permit table and every volunteer vest made perfect sense. Patricia was not just controlling the lot. She was monetizing it. And if that number was accurate, the real total was probably even higher. My hands tightened around the papers before I realized it. Donna noticed. You okay? Yeah, I muttered, just finally understanding what she is really doing. Donna gave me a long look over her glasses. Grant, I have worked this office 32 years. You know what usually gets people in trouble? Greed. No. She pointed toward the financial report. Paper trails. That line hit me harder than anything else all morning. Because Patricia had left a paper trail everywhere. HOA notices. Revenue statements. Parking maps. Recorded meetings. Community newsletters bragging about expanded parking capacity. She documented the whole operation herself because she thought nobody would ever challenge her authority. I gathered my papers slowly while thunder rattled outside the courthouse windows. Right before I left, Donna stopped me one more time. One piece of advice. What is that? She leaned closer. Do not confront her yet. Why not? Donna smiled the way old courthouse workers smile when they have seen too many people ruin good cases with bad tempers. Because every day she keeps collecting money on property she does not own. She tapped the revenue statement again. Your case gets bigger. I walked out carrying 2 boxes of records and one very dangerous realization. Patricia Thornwell did not just owe me an apology anymore. She had built an entire HOA revenue stream on land that legally belonged to me. And the worst part for her? She had put almost all of it in writing. Most people think winning a property fight means screaming louder than the other side. That is exactly how you lose. After leaving the county office, I sat in my truck for almost an hour watching rain drip down the windshield while Donna's words rolled around in my head. Every day, she keeps collecting money on property she does not own. Your case gets bigger. That changed everything for me. Up until then, I had been reacting, defending, pushing back. But now I understood the game Patricia was really playing. And more important, I understood she had already gone too far to quietly back out. People like Patricia never stop when they are ahead. They get greedy. So I stopped fighting her in public. That confused her immediately. I paid none of the fines, but I also stopped arguing over the signs. Stopped confronting volunteers. Stopped warning residents. I just watched. Quietly. Every morning I drove over before sunrise carrying coffee and a little spiral notebook. Then I sat inside the office while Ridgeline Meadows kept expanding operations on my land like nothing was wrong. More painted spaces appeared. More permit signs. More event parking. Patricia even added QR code payment stickers near the entrance so visitors could pay parking fees directly from their phones. She turned my father's parking lot into a miniature airport. And every single thing she added became evidence. The funniest part? Patricia started acting nicer once I stopped resisting. One afternoon, she walked into the office unannounced wearing some cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than my first pickup truck. Grant, she said warmly, I am glad to see you becoming more cooperative. Cooperative. That word nearly made me choke on my coffee. Just tired of arguing, I muttered. Her shoulders relaxed instantly. I could practically see her confidence growing. You know, she said, glancing around the office, there may be opportunities for compensation if this partnership continues long-term. Partnership. Amazing. She was stealing my property and calling it teamwork. I leaned back in my chair. What kind of compensation? Revenue sharing, perhaps. There it was. Finally. Patricia Thornwell had just admitted the HOA was profiting from my property. Out loud. On camera. She kept talking without realizing every word was being recorded by the old security microphone mounted above the filing cabinet. The board believes centralized parking improves community value significantly. Board believes. I asked. Yes. And the board approved charging permit fees? Naturally. She smiled confidently. Communities require structure. I nodded slowly while writing one sentence in my notebook. HOA admits fee collection on private lot. Patricia left 5 minutes later looking happier than I had ever seen her. She thought silence meant surrender. Big mistake. Over the next 3 weeks, things got even worse for the HOA without them realizing it. Residents started complaining online about parking fees increasing. Patricia responded by creating premium reserved spaces near the clubhouse. $25 per event. Then she approved overnight guest permits. Then contractor permits. Then football game overflow parking during weekends. Every new fee created another paper trail. Another bank deposit. Another violation. One Saturday afternoon, I noticed a white work van parked near Space 22. The driver sat inside eating chips while staring at one of the HOA signs. Finally, he climbed out and walked toward my office. You grant, he asked. Depends who is asking. He laughed a little. Name is Carl. I install internet lines over in Henderson County. He held up a yellow parking ticket. These people serious? Looks that way. Man, I parked here 20 minutes. He shook his head. Lady in the Lexus threatened to tell me. Did she mention the parking fee? $40. He stared at the lot again. Who owns this place anyway? I looked him dead in the eye. I do. Carl blinked hard. Then why are they charging people? Good question. And people were finally starting to ask it on their own now. That was important. Because the more Patricia pushed, the harder it became to keep the illusion alive. Around that same time, Deputy Ellis stopped by again. This time he did not even pretend to support the HOA anymore. He walked into the office holding a stack of complaint forms and dropped them on the desk. You seeing this? Half the complaints came from Ridgeline residents themselves. Unauthorized towing. Aggressive volunteers. Parking disputes. One woman claimed her daughter got blocked in during a school pickup. Another resident complained about paying parking fees to attend her own neighborhood barbecue. Ellis shook his head slowly. This thing is turning into a mess. Not my mess, I said calmly. He looked around the office quietly before lowering his voice. Off the record? Sure. County Attorney's Office started asking questions about the HOA finances. Now that got my attention. Why? Apparently somebody reported unlicensed fee collection tied to non-owned commercial property. I almost smiled. Somebody. Interesting word. Could have been one resident. Could have been 10. Could have been Donna quietly pushing papers where they needed to go. Either way, Patricia was finally attracting the wrong kind of attention. That evening I stayed late reviewing footage again when something strange appeared on camera 4. Patricia and the HOA treasurer standing beside the cash box after another community event. Only this time the treasurer looked pale. Nervous. Patricia handed him papers, and he pushed them back. Even without sound, you could tell it was an argument. Then Patricia pointed directly toward my office window again. Hard. Aggressive. The treasurer finally threw his hands up and walked away. Patricia stood there alone for almost a full minute afterward. Not smiling anymore. Not confident anymore either. Just angry. Then she looked straight toward the security camera. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I think she realized she might not be the only person keeping records. The county hearing happened on a Thursday night during one of those heavy Tennessee storms that make the sky look bruised purple. By 6:30, the parking lot outside the municipal building was packed so full people were parking along the grass shoulder near the road. Funny thing was, half those cars had HOA parking permits hanging from the mirrors. Permits Patricia sold them for land she never owned. I sat quietly near the back of the hearing room with 2 banker boxes beside my chair while residents whispered all around me. Some looked nervous. Some looked angry. Some still honestly believed Patricia would walk in and smooth everything over with one of her polished speeches. Then the HOA board arrived. Patricia walked through the doors first wearing a navy blazer with gold buttons like she was running for governor. Her attorney followed carrying a leather briefcase. The HOA treasurer trailed behind them looking sick enough to faint. Patricia spotted me immediately. She smiled. That same fake smile she always used when cameras were around. "Grant," she said sweetly, "I hope we can resolve this professionally tonight." Professionally. Lady had spent months charging people money on stolen property and still talked like a human resources manager. I nodded once. That depends on what your definition of professional is. Her smile tightened just a little. Tiny crack. Barely noticeable. Then she walked toward the front row with the board members while thunder rattled the windows overhead. The county hearing room smelled like wet jackets and burnt coffee. Folding chairs squeaked every time somebody shifted around. Up front sat 3 county officials behind long wooden tables. County attorney, zoning officer, property records supervisor. And sitting closest to the microphone was Donna from the records office, wearing her reading glasses and looking completely unimpressed by the circus unfolding around her. That made me feel better instantly. At 7 sharp, the hearing started. Patricia's attorney spoke first. Slick guy? Expensive haircut. Voice smooth as radio commercials. He spent almost 20 minutes talking about community development, traffic coordination, shared neighborhood resources, and evolving public access needs. Lots of fancy words. Very little truth. Then Patricia stood up herself. Ridgeline Meadows has always acted in good faith for the benefit of our residents, she announced dramatically. We implemented parking guidance to improve safety and reduce congestion. Safety. There was that word again. Funny how people always claim safety right before taking something that belongs to somebody else. Patricia clicked a remote, and a projector screen lit up behind her showing photos of crowded events inside the subdivision. Cars parked neatly across my lot. Families walking toward HOA festivals. Christmas lights. Food trucks. Community movie nights. She pointed proudly at each photo like she built the place herself. As you can see, this parking area has functioned as integrated community infrastructure for years. Integrated community infrastructure. I almost laughed out loud. Then she made her mistake. Big mistake. The Homeowners Association invested significant operational resources into managing this property. Property. Not parking coordination. Not temporary use. Property. Donna's head lifted immediately at the word. So did the county attorneys. Patricia kept talking without realizing it. The board acted under reasonable authority to regulate access, collect maintenance fees, and oversee parking operations. Collect maintenance fees. There it was. Right into the microphone. Recorded forever. I looked over at the HOA treasurer. The poor guy looked ready to crawl under his chair. Finally, the zoning officer turned toward me. Mr. Holloway, you requested this hearing. You may present your documentation. The room got real quiet after that. I stood slowly and carried the first banker box to the front table. No dramatic speech. No yelling. Just paperwork. Lots of paperwork. My father bought this parcel in 1987, I said calmly, sliding the original deed across the table. Taxes have been paid continuously ever since. Donna immediately confirmed the document authenticity. Then I placed the survey maps beside it. Full parcel boundaries. Property lines. Commercial zoning overlays. Every single parking space outlined in black ink. The zoning officer leaned forward hard enough his chair squealed. All 48 spaces are inside your parcel. Every inch, I answered. Patricia's attorney interrupted quickly. Temporary public use can still establish implied community access patterns. Correct, Donna said evenly. But not ownership. Then she adjusted her glasses and dropped the real bomb. Especially not fee collection on non-owned commercial property. Silence. Absolute silence. Patricia stopped smiling completely. I opened the second banker box. Out came printed HOA financial records. Parking fee revenue. Permit income. Event collections. Towing agreements. Spreadsheet after spreadsheet. According to HOA disclosures, I explained calmly, Ridgeline Meadows collected over $28,000 tied directly to my property. Residents started whispering instantly. One woman gasped loud enough, everybody heard it. Patricia's attorney stood up fast. We object to the interpretation of those records. Then maybe this will help, I replied. That is when I rolled out the photos. HOA signs bolted into my asphalt. Volunteers collecting cash beside my office. QR payment codes attached to my fence. Tow trucks operating under HOA authority. Then came the security footage screenshots. Patricia herself standing in front of the permit table directing fee collection operations. Patricia herself calling the lot HOA managed parking. Patricia herself offering me revenue sharing during our recorded conversation. That last part hit the room like lightning. Her attorney froze completely. Patricia's face lost color so fast it honestly shocked me. The county attorney leaned toward the microphone slowly. Mrs. Thornwell, did your association collect parking revenue from property you did not legally own? Patricia opened her mouth, closed it again, tried once more. We believed. Yes or no? The county attorney interrupted. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, Patricia Thornwell had absolutely nothing to say. The room stayed quiet so long you could hear rain tapping against the courthouse windows. Patricia stood frozen beside the projector screen with both hands gripping the edge of the table so tight her knuckles turned white. Her attorney leaned over whispering something fast into her ear, but honestly it did not matter anymore. Everybody in that room had already seen the same thing. The deeds, the surveys, the revenue records, the permits, the towing invoices. Months of fake authority built on land that never belonged to the HOA in the first place. Finally, the county attorney cleared his throat. Mrs. Thornwell, until this matter is fully investigated, Ridgeline Meadows Homeowners Association is ordered to immediately cease all parking operations tied to Mr. Holloway's parcel. Patricia blinked hard. You cannot just, we absolutely can, the zoning officer cut in. Especially if unauthorized fees were collected. Residents started murmuring louder now. Angry murmuring. Not confused anymore. Angry. One older resident stood up near the back row holding a parking permit in his hand. Wait a minute, he shouted. I paid this woman $300 this year for parking access. Another voice joined in. They towed my daughter's car last month. Then another. They charged contractors every weekend. Suddenly the room exploded into overlapping complaints. Patricia tried raising her hands like she could still control the crowd. Please, everybody calm down. Calm down, one woman snapped. You charged us to park on somebody else's property. The HOA treasurer finally cracked right there in front of everybody. Poor guy looked like he had not slept in weeks. He stood up slowly and adjusted his glasses with shaking hands. I told the board we needed legal clarification months ago. Patricia spun toward him so fast her chair nearly tipped over. Do not do this here. You already did it, he muttered. Then he looked directly at the county officials. The parking revenue was used to offset HOA operating deficits. That sentence hit the room harder than anything else all night. Because now everybody understood the truth. The HOA had not just been bossy. They had been using my property to financially prop up the entire neighborhood budget. Patricia's attorney quietly started packing his briefcase after that. Smartest decision he made all evening. By the following week, everything unraveled fast. The towing company canceled its contract with Ridgeline Meadows almost immediately after reviewing the property records. Turns out towing vehicles from land your client does not own creates legal problems people do not enjoy paying for. The county froze HOA parking fee collections pending investigation. Residents demanded refunds. Then the local newspaper picked up the story. That part really hurt Patricia. Small-town papers love nothing more than HOA scandals, especially ones involving fake permits and angry retirees. The headline showed up 3 days later right beside the weather forecast. Homeowners Association accused of charging fees on private property. Patricia resigned from the board that same afternoon. No speech. No apology. Just a short email blaming administrative misunderstandings and stepping down for personal reasons. Funny how people always discover personal reasons right after public humiliation. About 2 weeks later, Deputy Ellis stopped by the lot while I was repainting faded parking lines near the south row. He leaned against his cruiser watching me work for a minute before speaking. Quiet around here now. Best kind of quiet, I answered. And it was true. No volunteers. No permit tables. No orange cones. No fake parking authority. Just clean asphalt warming under the Tennessee sun the way my father intended. Ellis kicked at a loose pebble near the curb. You know, he admitted, a lot of people thought you were bluffing at first. I laughed softly. Paperwork does not bluff. He smiled at that. Then he nodded toward the fresh painted lines. Your dad built all this. Every inch. Ellis looked around the empty lot slowly. He would probably be proud you fought for it. That one hit deeper than I expected. After he left, I sat alone on the old folding chair outside the office while evening sunlight stretched across the asphalt. The place smelled like fresh paint and summer heat. For the first time in months, nobody was arguing. Nobody was threatening fines. Nobody was pretending my land belonged to the community. A little after sunset, an old blue pickup rolled into Space 12. Same older man from the diner. He climbed out carrying a paper bag and grinned at me. Heard parking is free again. Always was, I said. He laughed so hard, he almost dropped his food. Then he reached into his pocket and tried handing me $20. For the trouble. I pushed his hand away. Just enjoy your meatloaf sandwich. He nodded once before walking toward the diner. I watched him disappear through the front doors while neon lights flickered on across the highway. Then I looked out over the parking lot one more time. 48 spaces. Same cracked asphalt. Same faded edges. Same property taxes due every year. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. Mine because my father worked for it. Mine because the deed said so. And mine because I finally remembered something grief almost made me forget. Quiet people are not weak people. Sometimes they are just patient enough to let loud people destroy themselves first.